Good morning again, everyone. My name is Panduka Samarasinghe. I'm with Wavelink, your favorite Fortinet distributor in the world. Thank you for joining us for this Info Byte session. Today, we are going to be looking at FortiSwitch technologies and how FortiSwitch with Fortinet's other technologies can help you secure the LAN edge. And I will be the main presenter. And I have Matt Baldwin, a Fortinet Enterprise Security Architect, joining us and helping us through the webinar and then helping us with some demos. And then Rod Christie, our pre-sales team lead, who's going to be helping with any questions that you may have in the middle of the webinar. So the format is I will be presenting right throughout, and then at the end, we will be having quiz session, a couple of quizzes from the content that we discussed during the webinar. And so, yeah, please pay attention. Once you answer the quizzes properly, we will select the top 3, and then we will give you all some goodies. Yeah. So, without further ado, let's start. So, the agenda for today is we're going to be looking at the challenges in securing the LAN edge, things that any partner or an end customer might face, and then how Fortinet Secure LAN edge technologies can solve those problems. And then we're going to be looking at use cases, FortiSwitch models, and FortiSwitch deployment technologies, and management platforms, and then ending with a FortiLAN cloud demo, right? And at the very end, like I said, we have the Q&A session, which should have some interesting questions coming at your way. So to start off with the challenges at the Ethernet LAN edge, I mean, what are the pain points of customers these days? The main one I can think of is actually with the influx of these IoT devices, hundreds and thousands of millions. I think I saw somewhere the number being some 75 billion devices. Of course, not all of them are going to go through your network, but there will be a considerable amount of new devices that's trying to go through your networks. I mean, this, apart from the usual technology devices we are talking about, multiple mobile devices and things like your your refrigerator or your toothbrush, even. Some of them have Wi-Fi these days. So how do you scale up to allow all these devices and let them go through your network? Now, if you are still having your traditional LAN switching capabilities, and you're actually going to have a bit of a problem catering to all these new devices. They're going to give some increased pressure, and as a result, they're going to slow down their network, and then that's going to lead into a degraded user experience. Now, that is one problem. Right now, this is the networking side, the bandwidth side. What about security? Most of these devices are unknown. They come from various manufacturers, right? So you need to first categorize them. You need to understand what these devices do, because without that, there's no hope of securing these devices. Now, typically, what you would do is you would bring in new security solutions to bridge these gaps. So you have to start catering for the networking side, as well as bring in new security solutions to bridge the security side, because most of these devices, they are not built with security in mind, right? So you're going to have that task falls completely on you to send these devices through the network and then protect your assets. Now, this ends up complicating your management. You're going to have to spend a lot of human hours trying to categorize them, assign them into different parts of the network. And if something happens in the middle, there's a vulnerability or there's some problem, you're going to have to log into 10 different platforms to build the picture and find out what exactly happened, right? So for this, you you need qualified support personnel, and you're going to have to end up spending quite a bit of money and time trying to manage networks like this. So how do we solve this with the help of Fortinet? Now, Fortinet's vision for securing the Ethernet edge can be broken down into three parts, right? So what we do is we try to give you a solution that is intelligent, integrated, and simple. Now, let's discuss this. How is this intelligent? Now, you see the FortiGate, which is one of the most popular products in the market today, as one of the best NGFW firewalls. Now, we know how the NGFW firewall protects your network at the network layer, right? But what about the intelligence on the other part, the FortiSwitch and the FortiAP, when you're extending yourself to the LAN? Now, all these devices are built with integration in mind. What that means is when you deploy a FortiSwitch and FortiAP, not only they can talk to each other, not only they can identify each other, they can actually share intelligence. And with the sharing intelligence comes machine learning and then automation, right? So that's the intelligence part. Integration, this is integrated security. Now, you already know that the FortiGate provides you industry best NGFW capabilities, right? With the FortiGate being able to talk to FortiSwitch and FortiAP, you can actually extend that NGFW capability from the network layer all the way to the switch and all the way to the AP. What that means to you, the customer, is that when the new devices enter your network, either via a hardware switch port or via SSID wirelessly, from the moment they touch the AP or the switch, all that security, that NGFW security that is provided at the network layer is already there at the edge. Now, that's the integrated part. And then the other one is simplicity. Now, remember in the earlier slide, we talked about how a typical network manager would have to log into multiple platforms to configure and figure out what's happening in the network. But with Fortinet, from the FortiGate to the FortiSwitch to the FortiAP, everything is configured and managed via the FortiGate. You don't have to log into the FortiSwitch interface. You don't have to log into the FortiAP interface. All you have to do is make the connection, and all those devices are managed via the FortiGate. So what that means to you, all you have to do, you only have to learn about the FortiGate and the FortiOS, right? You don't have to spend time watching videos for any other vendors or any other technologies, because everything happens in the FortiGate. Now, these three together, the intelligence, the security integration, and simplicity, it at the end simplifies your network management, and it gives you end-to-end security. And on the long run, this helps you lower the cost of ownership. How? You don't have to spend any extra time or money on learning different technologies. And two, licensing. Apart from the licensing that you pay for the security on the FortiGate, you really don't have to pay for any other licensing when it comes to FortiSwitches or FortiAPs. All you have to purchase, or rather spend on, is the hardware cost for FortiSwitch or AP and the support. Everything else, the management capability is provided to you free from the FortiGate. So there's really no add-ons, no hidden costs involved here. Right? So that's how we give you a proper solution that is intelligent, security integrated, simple, and at the end of the day, very low cost of ownership. There's one other feature that I'd like to mention here that doesn't get talked often enough. This is the base NAC features that are presented on the FortiSwitch. That is again managed by the FortiOS. Now, Fortinet does have their full-fledged NAC device, NAC solution, but I mean that is separate, right? You can justify having that on a network that is big enough for that. But What about all the medium-sized networks? With the FortiSwitch, we actually integrate the basic NAC capability. What this means to you is this is going to solve one big problem that I discussed earlier. Remember, I said in order to secure these new devices, you first have to identify them, right? Without knowing what you have in the network, you can't really hope to secure anything. So with the NAC features, what happens is we can provide NAC policies to each of the FortiSwitch ports, and those NAC policies will automatically identify your devices based on your MAC address or based on various other methods. And the FortiGate already has an IoT device database, which is built from billions of MAC addresses based on the respective developers. So we all know that by reading the first bit of the MAC address, we can identify the device manufacturer. So that way, while integrating the FortiGate security with the FortiSwitch, with this IoT database, any device that is connected to your FortiSwitch can be automatically identified and placed in the network segment that you wish to. I mean, say for example, you have two things: an IP phone and an IP cam. Now, earlier you had to designate your switch ports, saying, "Okay, I have to connect the IP phone to this port for this in order to get for it to go to this VLAN." But now with the NAC policies, that is automated. You can plug in the IP phone or the IP cam to any switch port in the switch, and it will be automatically categorized. And you can create policies in the FortiGate to deal with those categories. Right. Now, this is how we bring in the LAN edge side of the network to the Fortinet security fabric. As you know, the security fabric's main task, main vision is to protect the entire digital attack surface of a common network, right? Now, we can actually tie in the story that I said about the LAN edge to these three pillars of the Fortinet security fabric. I mean, these are the things that you can talk to customers who can understand how these things make sense, right? So we can say it's broad because we already identify almost the entire set of IoT devices with the knowledge of the IoT database, and it's integrated and it's automated because the switching and the APs are all integrated with the FortiGate. And since these devices can communicate with each other, we can automate most of the tasks that would otherwise take a lot of human intervention. I can give you one very clear example how this works. So let's say you have an end user who's trying to download some file, and then maybe FortiClient or maybe a different third-party vendor antivirus that can integrate with Fortinet Security Fabric identifies that file as a malicious file. And then as soon as that happens, either the FortiClient or the other software will inform that via machine learning and other methods to the FortiGate. And as soon as the FortiGate finds that out, the FortiGate can actually talk to the switch and the AP or the AP and instruct them to automatically place that user in a quarantined VLAN. So from the point of detecting the threat to the point of quarantining that threat, everything was automated. There was no single human intervention that was required to do that. Of course, while you're placing that user in the quarantined VLAN, the FortiGate can simultaneously send a message to either the SOC or network administrator saying, "Hey, I've found this user doing something suspicious. I've placed them in a separate part of the network so that they can harm anybody else. Just go and have a look at it." So this is how the whole integration and automation story comes together with the Fortinet LAN edge. Right. Let's take a look at a few use cases. Of course, we can align campus networking with the initial problem and the solution that I was talking about. With this, you have multiple users and multiple devices coming in uh, with their devices and with their services. So you need to have a proper switching and Wi-Fi infrastructure, first of all, to cater them on the bandwidth side. So you need to have switches that are built really robust, and you need APs that do their job and doesn't let the users feel any traffic problems, any bottlenecks, right? And then once they come in with the FortiLink technologies, you can actually have them talk to the FortiGate. And if you have a FortiGate in a HA setup with the integration, we can actually seamlessly have the switching infrastructure switch to the secondary FortiGate if the primary has any problems, right? And also with the FortiNAC technology that we talked about earlier, we can automatically place those different devices in the appropriate network segments so that they can be dealt with accordingly. Right. Then we have a case of trying to increase FortiGate's port density. Right. There may be a situation where the FortiGate doesn't have enough ports to cater to the amount of network segments one may have in a certain network. So how do we solve that problem? What we can actually do is we can get a FortiSwitch connected to the FortiGate, and we can assign different VLANs to each of those switch ports to complete the number of network segments that are needed, right? So, and after doing that, the FortiGate, when we are creating security policies, just like we can use any of the FortiGate's native ports as a source or a destination in a policy, we can use the VLANs as a source or a destination in a policy. So that way, when we actually assign a VLAN to a switch port, we are technically doing the same thing. We are extending the capability of the FortiGate's ports right to the switch, and that switch will act as an extension, right? And of course, all the FortiSwitches support this application and methodology of doing the network. The last use case I'm going to be talking about is zero-touch deployment. Because of, I mean, let's take an example where you have a big company who's refreshing their switching infrastructure. They have the entire LAN infrastructure, right? The switches, APs, and the perimeter firewalls. So you have 30 different branches, and this whole order is getting shipped out from Fortinet's warehouse. Now, traditionally, you're going to have a technician, a qualified technician at that, walk into each of these branches and configure them to go to the internet and then with the VPNs or whatever, right? But right now, with the help of FortiDeploy and FortiManager, what we can do is we can actually purchase the FortiDeploy license for each of these serial numbers of the devices that are going to different branches. And all we need is a person who can go in and connect the wires, right? We don't need anybody who needs to configure these, right? Let's say a branch has a FortiGate, FortiSwitch, and 2 FortiAPs, right? You just ship them to the end user. Somebody has to plug the devices, connect them to the correct ports. And once the FortiGate comes online, FortiGate will automatically talk to FortiDeploy, and FortiDeploy will tell which FortiManager, or rather the IP of the FortiManager, for that FortiGate to reach out to. And once the FortiGate makes the connection with the FortiManager can then push the entire configuration of the FortiGate, the FortiSwitch, and the FortiAP towards that branch. So there's really no need for anybody to go into that branch and configure anything. Everything is done automatically. You just need somebody to connect the cables. So that way you can actually cut a lot of cost and time with somebody trying to having to pay an engineer to go and configure them. Right. So just to summarize this whole narrative that I've been trying to tell you, why should our customers care about Fortinet Ethernet, right? So one, because it's scalable. It can cater to any networking need. You have multiple devices that can suit multiple network environments. You have up around 14 FortiGate devices, and then you have just as many switches and APs. And yeah, so once we plan the network, we can make it extremely scalable, and these devices are integrated with each other so that machine learning and AI can happen automatically, and they are secure. There is no other solution that provides tight integration to NGFW because, as we discussed earlier, the capability of NGFW that traditionally resides at the network layer can be brought all the way to the network edge to the device with this solution. And also, since this entire configuration and management is happening uh, at the FortiGate, it becomes very simple when it comes to managing this because you don't have to log into any other devices. You'll have one FortiGate that is taking care of all the configuration. And once you have the security fabric set up, all the different FortiGates can be, I mean, you can actually log into all those different FortiGates from a single interface. And the one thing you have to learn is the FortiOS because that is the same across everything, every Fortinet device. So there's really nothing new to learn after you know once you configure this a couple of times. So yeah, so now we come to the FortiSwitch models that are available. We can first talk about the access switch family. We have, starting from the left side, we have the entry level, the 100 series, mid-range 200, premium 400, and aggregation 500. This is how Fortinet has decided to label them. But as a whole, you can actually separate the entry-level devices and consider the rest of the devices to have more or less the same features. Well, why do I say this? Say if you decide to go with the standalone switch configuration without having FortiGate in the mix, you'll notice that the 100 series does not have any layer 3 capabilities. But the rest of them, 200, 400, 500, they all have L3 capability switches. So you can do inter-VLAN routing within them. However, when you bring in the FortiGate into the mix, the lack of L3 capability disappears because all that is configured by FortiGate, which is an L3 device. And the next, yeah, so this brings me to the second point here. Again, the 100 series is the only series that does not have the MC lag capability. Before talking about MC lag, let's talk about lag. So link aggregation. All these devices from 100 to 500, they support link aggregation. However, MC lag, multi-chassis link aggregation, sort of a high availability technology for switches. That capability, MC lag capability, is only available from the 200 series and up, not the 100 series. But there's one last feature that I'd like to discuss about the 100 series. That is, the 100 series has the smallest switch that has 10 gig uplinks, which is the 124F series. That's the smallest switch that supports 10 gig uplink ports. So all the other, I think except for the 200 series, all the other switches have 10 gig uplinks, right? Yeah, so moving on to the data center switch family, we have the 1000 and the 3000 series. Apart from the usual port density and other capabilities, one other fact that comes to mind when talking about the data center switch family is that this is where we start giving you hot swappable power supplies, dual hot swappable power supplies at that. The series earlier, the access switch family, even though they have dual power capability, they're not hot swappable. Right. So the switch that starts this is the 1024D. That's the first switch in the DC series that you get dual hot swappable power supplies. And everything from there has that capability. And now we have the new data center switch family editions, the 1024E and 1024ET. The T specifies that the T1024E is actually a copper-based switch. That's a very high bandwidth switch that still runs copper for any requirements you may have that suits this. Right? And they're available from December in the mid Q4 price list. Now we look at the FortiSwitch rugged family. The two main switches we have currently are the 112D PoE and 124D switch. Just make note, these are, I mean, all the other switches that we talked about earlier are for indoor use. But this rugged switch family, these two can be used outdoors under certain conditions. The 112D PoE is built for IP30 standards, and 124D is built for IP40 standards. Right, so that means there's increased level of dust protection and more or less the same level of protection against humidity. And yes, these have no moving parts, and they have very strong bodies built in that aid with the passive cooling. And I think we have, so we have roadmap for two new rugged switches, the FSR 424E and the 216F with DIN capability. Judging by the connectivity they provide, so they're pretty big, 4 10 gig SFPs and 2 QSFPs. So yeah, and they all have redundant power, layer 2 and layer 3. So yeah, they're pretty big switches that's coming up in the roadmap. FortiSwitch deployment. Now, so we talked about how switches can help the network, and we talked about what's available to help the network. Now let's do a little look at how these are deployed, right? So primarily, there are two methods, with a FortiGate or without a FortiGate. Right? All the deployment methods and all the management platforms fall into one of these two categories, with a FortiGate or without a FortiGate. Now, in this discussion, we are not going to talk much about the standalone method, that is deploying this without a FortiGate. So with FortiGate, when we talk about the way that the FortiGates communicate with these switches is via what we call FortiLink. FortiLink, to simplify, is a set of protocols that allows communication between the switches and the FortiGates. Right? And so managed with Forti. So yeah, so with the few things to talk about FortiLink. So with the help of FortiLink, we can actually stack the switches. What happens is when you have the FortiGate talking to one switch, you can add the subsequent switches via daisy chaining. You can connect one switch's uplink to another switch's uplink, and then those two uplinks will form what we call an inter-switch link, ISL for short form, right? And that's what it's meant by a managed switch connects directly or indirectly to the FortiLink interface. And you can support multiple network topologies. If you have a FortiGate, say with multiple VDOMs, you can actually have one, you can have a FortiGate, a FortiLink interface per VDOM, so that those FortiLinks will be managing their own switches or switch stacks without communicating between each other. And also, like I mentioned earlier, FortiLink can support FortiGates either in standalone or HA, active passive or active active methods. Right. I'm going to quickly jump into a small demo from here. Just try to show you what happens when you connect a new switch to a FortiGate. So I have my ATF lab FortiGate here. Whenever you get a new FortiGate these days, you actually have the FortiLink automatically created for you, right? This is the FortiLink interface. Usually it comes with these A and B ports in there, but I've just customized that a little bit. And I've included two different ports in the FortiLink. Now in the FortiLink interface, you have this 169.254 network, and it automatically has the DHCP server enabled, and this DHCP server is the one that's going to be giving IP addresses for any of the FortiSwitches in the stack, right? And any VLANs that you would like to be pushed into any of the switches must be created under FortiLink. If there are any other VLANs that's hanging off any of these interfaces, unfortunately, we cannot publish them onto the FortiSwitch, right? So say you want to create a new VLAN, go create a new interface, type VLAN, and then you must connect that with the FortiLink interface, right? And with the FortiLink interface, you get actually more than 7 different VLANs by default. I'm sure you can see these other VLANs that I've created, but the default VLANs you can very easily identify with the VLAN ID. 6 of them carry this 4000 series VLANs, and there's the default FortiLink VLAN, which takes VLAN ID 1, right? So as you can see, there are automatically created VLANs for video, voice, quarantine, and onboarding. So this is where that FortiNAC capability comes into play, right? So you can have NAC rules presented at each of the FortiSwitch ports, and then once the NAC rules categorize the devices that are coming in automatically, you can choose them either to be placed in one of these default VLANs, or you can ask them to be placed in one of your own VLANs, right? Let's go and have a look at FortiSwitch. So right here, I've got 2 switches. One of them is my 108 full PoE, and there's this other 124 full PoE. So I've just connected that so that I can show you what happens when a new switch is connected to the FortiGate, right? So all you have to do is, once that switch gets detected under managed switches, just right click and authorize, right? So what happens now is, when you take a FortiSwitch out of the box, its default mode of management is the standalone management. It does not have the FortiLink management when it's out of the box. The moment you connect that switch to the FortiGate, and when I right click and say authorize, what happens is that switch reconfigures itself to be managed by FortiLink, which means the FortiGate, and then it is going to reboot and come online with the FortiLink capability. It's just going to take a little while for this to come online. So until then, what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to show you a switch that already has been authorized and accepted in the FortiGate. So once the switch comes online, you can actually go to FortiSwitch ports, and then the FortiGate will show you all the ports that that are there that's presented in the switch. As you can see, it is 108. I have 8 ports with PoE capability, this little lightning icon, and these two, port 9 and 10, without PoE. But you can see very easily they've connected. So port 9 is actually connected to the 124 switch that I just authorized, and port 10 is connected to the FortiGate. Now, from the comments I've got, the most confusing for anybody who's starting to use a FortiSwitch is the difference between this native and allowed VLANs, right? So let me make that very simple for you. The native VLAN, if you place a native VLAN on a FortiSwitch port, what happens is when any device gets plugged into that switch port, this native VLAN is the one that's going to be giving out DHCP. So basically, any untagged traffic tagged under the native VLAN, right? What about the allowed VLANs? Let's say this switch port is actually, so this is actually connected to my AP U431F, right? So let's see, this AP is bringing traffic that is untagged, which gets tagged by the native VLAN, and there is traffic that is coming as already tagged, right? So what happens to those? What happens to those packets that are tagged already? So in order for them to pass, you're going to have those VLANs with that are matching the tagged packets in the allowed VLAN section, right? So that's basically what's doing. So I mean, what I've done here is giving VLANs to each of my SSIDs. I mean, you take one look at here, you'll know what movies I'm interested in. So if you go into one of the SSIDs, what I do is I create the SSID, and then in this optional VLAN ID, I put the VLAN ID that is already created in FortiLink. So what happens is the moment any device that gets connected to this SSID, that gets tagged with the VLAN 240. And for it, now it will pass through the AP to the switch, right? Now for that traffic to pass through the switch, that that VLAN ID must be inside this allowed VLANs, right? And then once that traffic goes from the AP through the switch, once it comes to the FortiGate, it will be coming into this FortiLink interface. And what happens to that traffic? In order for that traffic to go into wherever,
Are you still there, Panduka?
So it looks like we've lost Panduka. I think my section, so it's Matt from Fortinet here. I think my section is the next section anyway, which is talking about FortiLAN Cloud. So I'm just loading up the PowerPoint and demo as it's a few seconds ahead of when I was expecting.
Thanks, Matt.
I'll be able to, hopefully I'll be able to take control if, oh, is he back?
Yeah, I'm back online. Sorry about
Okay.
that. Yeah, but anyway, I managed to say what I wanted to say. Sorry about that. So that's how you basically start configuring the VLANs, and then that's how you configure a switch, right? Yeah, so then going on to PoE, there is a small naming convention that you have to understand to properly recognize the PoE power budgets and PoE ports in the FortiSwitches. Now, up until the E series, FortiSwitch E series, you could very easily look at a FortiSwitch model. Let's say the red lettering here, FSW FortiSwitch 124E, and then you have another model called FortiSwitch 124E PoE, and then there's another model called 124E FPoE. So what's the difference here? Until the E series, it's very quite easy to understand. If you see FSW 124E with no mention of PoE in the model name, then that means there are no PoE. That switch is not PoE capable. And then you have the next switch model, 124E PoE, just PoE, which meant only 12 out of those 24 ports were PoE capable. But if you come to the next level, FPoE, 124E FPoE means F stands for full PoE, right? So that means all 24 PoE, all 24 ports are PoE capable. Now this gets a little complicated when it comes to the F series, the latest model. Now you still have the same names, 124F, 124F PoE, and 124F FPoE. Now, earlier this meant there were dedicated PoE ports and non-PoE ports. But now in the F series, what that means is by default, in either PoE or FPoE, all the ports are PoE capable. However, in the PoE switch, the PoE power budget is half of the actual FPoE switch. I hope that makes sense. Takes a little while to understand, but once you understand it, you can just quickly look at a switch model and then understand what that switch is doing. So the FortiSwitches can actually, most of them can provide PoE and PoE plus, but there are some switches, actually one in particular that provides the new UPoE standard, which is 60 watts per port. That's only available in FortiSwitch M426E FPoE. Remember, this is FPoE, but the E series, which means only half the ports in that switch are PoE capable, right? I hope I didn't confuse you any further, but yeah. And now we go on to FortiSwitch management. Like I said, there are only two types of managing in the bigger picture, either with a FortiGate or without a FortiGate, right? So now we can also break this into on-prem management and cloud management. When it comes to on-prem management, you can have, even with the FortiGate and without FortiGate, there are three methods here. So there's standalone, there's FortiGate managed, and then there's FortiSwitch Manager VM. The FortiSwitch Manager VM is fairly new. It's in its initial release. The idea is this VM will give you will help you manage around up to 2,500 switches in any network, right? So this you get this appliance as a virtual machine, and then you have to purchase a license, which depends on the number of switches that you're going to manage. And then when it comes to cloud management, we have very clear two options. The FortiLAN cloud, that is purely cloud management without a FortiGate involved. And then we have the FortiGate cloud. So this is basically the cloud interface of the FortiGate. But if that FortiGate has a FortiSwitch connected, you can actually manage them from the FortiGate cloud as well. Okay, with a FortiGate attached and without a FortiGate attached. Just a little bit more about the FortiSwitch manager. Yeah, so it unlike your typical FortiLink connection over layer 2, this switch manager actually connects to switches via layer 3, utilizes similar network design, and it's basically built for those customers who need to manage a massive amount of switches without having a FortiGate in place. This again, I would like to reiterate, it's in the earlier stages of development. Right now, this is only offering CLI based management. There is no GUI that's built into this. Yeah, that takes me to FortiLAN Cloud, and I'm going to hand it over to Matt Baldwin, who's going to take it from here. Matt?
Thank you. Let me share my. Oh, can you? Thank you. So, yeah, FortiLAN Cloud. Basically, it's oops. Can you see the PowerPoint? PowerPoint or the?
No, I can only see the FortiLAN Cloud login
cool.
page.
Hopefully you can hear me okay as well, because tradies just rocked up to clean my roof right above where I'm working from home today, which is helpful. So yeah, FortiLAN Cloud, cloud-based management for non-FortiGate managed cloud. So simple, easy to use, can scale up to thousands of sites and devices. It can also do zero-touch provisioning. So the ability to just basically drop an AP or a switch on site, and as soon as it gets internet connection, as long as it's registered to your support account, it will appear for you to deploy and push out a zero-touch config. You can do them either on a schedule or basically as soon as it's connected, and I'll run through some of this in the demo. You can also use it for multi-tenancy. So as an MSSP, you can enable the multi-tenancy feature on your FortiCloud account, which will then allow you to, by, I guess, inheriting that multi-tenant FortiLAN Cloud accounts and management. There is a free tier available and a subscription for some more advanced. So when you go to FortiLAN Cloud webpage, so you can either go through support.fortinet.com and choose it from the drop-down menu at the top, or you can do like I do and just Google it and go straight to it from the Google results. So yeah, the free tier gives you a certain amount of logging retention, only 7 days, and you can only do 3 FortiSwitches per account, and you can't access all of the sort of advanced config in some of those switches as well. So I'm just going to jump straight in and log in. Hopefully my session is still active. Through the single sign-on process we go. So when it first loads up, we'll get a list of my, I guess, my sites and a summary of what's connected. So we can see I've got 3 switches. I've got some PoE stuff plugged in as well. If I had any issues, like the switch was running out of memory or anything like that, they would appear easy to view. And the same if they were unavailable, I'd see that which ones are up and which ones are down. We're going to jump into my site, so my MATLAB site. Jump to switches, and we'll see our dashboard. So we'll see, yes, everything's online. I've got, because this is a lab environment, I've only got 2 PoE things plugged in, so they happen to be Raspberry Pis. Running PoE, I can see my total power usage, I can see any critical events, any alarms, nothing real exciting on the dashboard. One of the cool things, similar to having the security fabric on your FortiGate managed FortiSwitches like Panduka demonstrated, is, I guess, not so much of an advanced topology, but you can actually see how things are connected. So I've manually connected, I'll plug all these in and manually configured these as a MC lag. By default, they would have just joined as a an ISS, an uplink port, like they have done here, like a FortiLink uplink. But I manually configured these because I wanted them to be an MC lag, so multi-chassis link aggregation for redundancy. We'll jump through and look at the switches, so we can see the detail on what they are, where they're connecting from, what firmware they're on. We can do some basic management from here, so we can do cable testing to check out any issues, find out cable lengths. We can do some basic config, so if we wanted to just push out a host name, change the time zone, change some IP addressing, some access, some ports. So maybe the native VLAN, we want to push out that is consistent across everything. We can do all that from this basic switch section. We can also do backups of the configs as well from here, so we can back up the full config straight into the cloud environment. And if we, for some reason, had an issue later on, we can also then restore and push that config back down. If we needed to, we could download it and manually upload it. So this is where I talked about the zero touch config. So I've built 2 here based on my switches that I was onboarding. So we look at the one for my 548 series. It'll basically show us an overview of what's been pushed to be configured. So wrong one, close, edit. So here is where I added that manual MC lag for a specific port. And I also chose to upgrade the firmware. So no matter what version it was on, it would automatically upgrade to my desired choice when it was onboarded. So first seen, yeah, or we can schedule it. So this could be pretty much anything we want to configure. So we could configure basically to provision a port. We could say, okay, we want specific ports to be down. We want specific ports to not have their PoE enabled. It could be we want to do some VLANs, so we want to basically auto push out and provision this VLAN. We're not assigning it to anything at the moment, but this is that VLAN we want to have configured. If we wanted to then assign it to some ports, we would add that to say, okay, port 4 and port 7. We're going to change the native VLAN to VLAN 10, and then we're going to allow VLAN 100, VLAN 101, on whatever we're using, will allow that. And as soon as this switch is onboarded, it will perform all these actions and configure all of these devices. It doesn't have to just be if we don't know the switch, the serial number, we could just choose a model. So, okay, any 124F PoE that is instantly onboarded, we're going to push out this config port. We can also use tags, so we can create a tag. So under the switch section, which I missed out, you can create switch tags. So we could say, okay, these are branch switches, these are core switches, these are top of rack switches, and we can do auto config of switches based on those tags as well. So the rest of it is fairly straightforward. So config of ports, config of interfaces, any trunks that you might want to put in. We can do remote packet captures. We can do VLAN templates. So if you want to, I guess, have a consistent VLAN ID and name, you can use templates and then push those out to the individual switches and apply those to individual switches. And then you have all your monitoring as well, so you can check out stats on each individual switch. So I can see here when I onboarded all my lab yesterday, Monday, that I can see I tracked the upgrade process, and it was showing me whether it was doing the firmware upgrade, whether it was pushing the config, and now it's showing it's complete. We can check all the PoE stats. You can check all your everything you would expect to be able to do from the switch locally to be for monitoring. You can do from the FortiLAN cloud. So we can see here I've got a device plugged into port 47, and it's consuming 3.6 watts of PoE power. Yeah, so that's FortiLAN cloud in a nutshell. It's great for, I guess, yeah, if you don't want to have sites that aren't going to have FortiGate for their switch management, but you still want to have a centralized switch management platform where rather than having to go into each switch individually, standalone, and manage it. So Pandu, I think I will hand back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was beautiful. If you could make me the presenter again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so that concludes our session. There is one last slide which I added here, which gives you some additional details. So I think you should have docs.fortinet.com in speed dial, something like a browser bookmark, because this is the centralized documentation repository for every Fortinet related device. It's very well documented and very easy to browse through. And then there's the FortiSwitch ordering guide, the partner portal, a few links about FortiSwitch manage, and then connecting to FortiLink over layer 3, and the FortiLAN cloud. And if anybody is interested in education side for certifications and workshops, there is the NSE 6 FortiSwitch self-paced course that you can access via the Fortinet Partner Portal, NSE 7 Secure Access, which brings FortiAP, FortiSwitch, and FortiAuthenticator together. And the last one is Fast Track. There's this SD branch course, which gives you a nice overview of switching and hands-on lab at the end of it. And just to add on, Matt, the FortiLAN cloud, that is, when you say FortiLAN, that is not only for switches, you can actually manage FortiAPs as well, isn't that correct?
Yeah, so I think it was at the beginning of Q3, we merged FortiSwitch Cloud and FortiAP Cloud into FortiLAN Cloud. Yeah, so you can manage your access points and your switches from a single site.
Yep. Thank you very much. So we are going to launch 5 questions to see whether you've been listening to this. And at the end of it, we will select somebody who has answered the best, and then top 3 actually, and then we will send some goodies your way. Rod, are you ready to launch the questions?
Yes, thanks, Dukes. Let's kick off with the first one. So what are the names of the 2 cloud management options available for the FortiSwitch? We'll probably give you about 15 seconds to answer this. Okay, a few seconds left. Okay, next question coming up.
Giving out the answers at the end or after each one?
I was hoping we were going to get the answers there. Hopefully, maybe I'm not guiding this correctly. What is the IP rating of the FortiSwitch Rugged series? I'll come back to that first question.
I'll be good to give the answers. I have the answers right now.
Okay, we'll give the answers at the end of this question.
At the end.
5 seconds. Yeah, 5 seconds longer. Let's see if I can get the poll to come up on this one. All right, what's the correct answer there, Panduka?
So there are actually two answers, IP30 and IP40. Remember, the 115D was IP30 and 124D was IP40.
Great, thank you. And third question. What is the model of the smallest FortiSwitch that has 10 gig SFP plus ports available? And a few seconds to go. Panduka, what's the correct answer there?
Oh, the correct answer is 124F. The 10 gig, the 10 gig capability came to the 100 series with the F generation switches. So the 108F, the smallest one, unfortunately doesn't have that. That's too small of a switch. It starts from the 124F. You get two 10 gig uplinks.
And 50% of our attendees got the correct answer on that one. So
nice.
Moving on to our fourth question. Which series of FortiSwitch does not support NC lag? I remember this question from your presentation. Looks like we've got overwhelming votes in on this one, 82%. So, Panduka, over to you.
Well, it's the 100 series. Again, being the entry level, it does not support MC lag, and it does not also support. It does not support L3 features as well. This is if you're going the standalone method and not the FortiGate method of managing.
Great. We got 84%. I see someone just snuck in there with the correct answer at the end. All right, looking at the next one. And fifth one. Now, which is the smallest FortiSwitch that offers hot swappable PSU? Looks like we've got quite a mix of answers coming in here on this one. So, all right, a couple of seconds to go. Over to you, Dukes.
Thank you. So yeah, so you should note that the hot swappable PSUs start from the 1000 series. Anything below from the, I think from 400 and 500, they do have multiple power supplies, but they're not hot swappable. Right? Hot swappable means you can remove the power supply while the switch is running. So that capability is only introduced from the 1000 series, and the smallest one is 1024D.
Excellent, thank you. We got 44% correct on that one. So I'll close that and move on to our last question for the day. Which FortiSwitch model contains UPoE ports? I think everyone's got that one nailed. So over to you, Dukes. What's the correct answer?
Thank you. Yeah, the correct answer is the M426E FPoE. That's out of the entire switching range. I think this is the only switch that supports UPoE. And UPoE means it's the highest rating right now we have, that is 60 watts per port.
Great, thank you. And that's our last question for today. We've got some great prizes there, as Panduka said. There's a Fortinet Wavelink branded jacket, and there is the same with a backpack, and we've got the third prize, a Fortinet tumbler, drink tumbler. So we will be letting everyone know. That was based on the quickest responses and correct answer. So I'll hand it back to you, Panduka.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot, Rod. So I think it's time to conclude the session. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and I hope you learned something today. And thank you, Matt and Rod, for helping me with the presentation. Have a good one.